So yesterday I put up a video using this map showing all of the countries in the world that have officially come out and recognized Nicolas Maduro as the leader of Venezuela. Now there was an insurrection, an attempted insurrection, I should say, in Venezuela yesterday where they had to arrest some low-level people inside their military. It took all of about 2 hours, maybe three. And then after that, some civilians went out and burned some trash cans, but that was pretty much it. And here we are on the 22nd, and strangely enough, nothing has changed. Absolutely zero has changed. Now, I know there's these riots pre-planned and fomented by the United States tomorrow in Venezuela, but I very much doubt they are going to have any real effect. So those of you who are on the wrong side of history, raise your hand. Yeah, random guy named Juan. Apparently you should have cracked a history book, and you should have read about the Bay of Pigs. You should have read about Pedro Carmonas. You should have read about what happens when you decide you want to hop into bed with guys like this and get played. Now, on a little bit more serious note, this individual needs to remember that he is a public servant of the people of the state of Florida. And as such, contacting or attempting to contact military leaders of other countries to help foment illegal insurrections is a violation not only of his oath of office, but quite a few laws as well. And he can be held accountable for any problems or hiccups or destruction that may result as a function of him using his office to do this. So be very careful upon the ground which you tread, Mr. Rubio, especially with your Twitter account attempting to contact Vladimir Padrino, the leader of the Venezuelan military, and attempting to convince him to commit treason or sedition in his country. That is not within your purview, especially with our government being shut down at the moment. You have your hands full. Now, there is a fantastic article on Reuters that will completely debunk the U.S. narrative. Venezuela's gold holdings in the Bank of England soar on Deutsche Deal. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the Bank of England has decided that they're not going to give Venezuela their gold back, even though it was requested. Basically stealing billions more from Venezuela, on top of the billions that are being seized by the EU, on top of the billions that have been seized by the United States. See, nobody tells you that part of the story. They love to point to the starvation and the economic collapse. They don't tell you that they are holding billions and billions of Venezuelan assets that could have been used to purchase food, to purchase parts for the oil rigs, to purchase medical supplies, forcing Venezuela to go backdoor to different countries. The reason they are working with Russia, Iran, China, Turkey is because the U.S. forced them to. Period. They didn't have a choice because of these sanctions. Now, in this article, it's very interesting when you read through it, and I'll link it, in part because Venezuela last year started carrying out gold barter operations with Turkey to import food following U.S. sanctions that have made international banks reluctant to handle Venezuelan transactions, meaning they have to barter for food with gold. Sound familiar? Preppers? To get transactions done because the U.S. won't allow them to use their fake fiat dollar. Imagine that. And of course, sorry about that, Deutsche Bank has decided to not comment on this because they realize there's going to be a lot of pushback. This is the story they do not want you to know. That this is really about the U.S. attempting to bully other countries into not supporting one they want to see fail. And Spain has told the U.S. to go take a flying leap, along with 13 or 14 other countries, because they've seen this before. They've seen this multiple times. And one final story here that, now this is a very small article, but it just shows how pervasive the story is. This is the Gay Star News, and it talks about this gay military pilot from Venezuela who was forced to become a sex worker. He wasn't forced to become a sex worker. He deserted. And it even says so in the story. He was a decorated pilot in Venezuela, and he deserted. So he couldn't get a real job anywhere in South America or Venezuela because he would have been thrown in jail. And so the only choice he had was to go to Spain and become, a male prostitute. But the whole idea here is to try to demonize Venezuela this way, as if somehow they threw this guy out for being gay and because of the financial problems that he was forced to do all this kind of garbage. This is how pervasive this effort to destroy Venezuela is. They've even enlisted the gay community. It is absolutely stunning. We have U.S. senators, sitting U.S. senators, that are attempting to contact military leaders in other countries and convince them to rise up in sedition and treason while our government is shut down and not functioning. Think of the logic of that for a minute. I mean, I don't know how the U.S. is going to even attempt to operate with one random guy named Juan as the leader, when the president of OPEC has already been installed, Venezuela, and their representative. OPEC's not going to recognize random guy named Juan. And they're sure not going to listen to his mandates. This is a nightmare so much worse than Panama ever was. And I know everybody's talking about what's happened in Syria and the bombings in Israel. Guys, that's half a world away. What's going on with Venezuela is happening hours away. And mark my words, this is going to bleed over into the Panama Canal. The operations. If there really is going to be a shooting war down there involving Colombia, Brazil, perhaps elements of the United States, and the Russians are involved, the Chinese are involved, the Turks might be involved, it will get out of hand very quick. This isn't like some little third world Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago. Nothing against those countries, but they're small. They're very limited in their scope of the ability to operate in a sovereign way. Venezuela is not. I mean, they're not a power like the United States, but they have big friends. And with our government not even working, why is this even on any senator's radar to begin with? We have 800,000 people not picking up paychecks. And the last two times our leader spoke, he said that the most important thing were the women and the children being protected from the coyotes attempting to traffic them up here. So it's the illegal immigrants. The wall is a humanitarian effort to protect the women and children of Honduras, and as a result of that, 800,000 Americans should go without paychecks, including the Coast Guard, which I could do a whole video on the insanity and the hypocrisy of defunding the Coast Guard so that you can get 200 something miles of a wall on a 2,000 mile border. Genius. 5D chess. I guess I just must be not up on how chess is played these days. But your problems, Mr. Random Guy Named Juan, are exactly where you're pointing. In Venezuela. And it needs to be solved by Venezuelans, not by these guys. It is an internal matter. So you need to ask questions when you don't understand that the body you are quote unquote president of was made illegal by the Supreme Court of Venezuela. So you don't have the right to invoke article anything of any constitution. You are a random guy named Juan. And that's all you are, legally. So, I'm sorry it took an American to tell you this, but it is what it is. Hopefully we can move beyond this, but no excuse for this individual whatsoever. And yeah, you can constitute it as a warning because he is a public servant and he has rules that the people of the state of Florida have set forth for him to abide by. He has a mission to serve the people of the state of Florida first. And him attempting to use his office and his Twitter account to contact the leader of the Venezuelan military to foment insurrection could wind up putting him in front of at least a committee, if not in front of a judge. So if anyone's out there within the sound of my voice that can pass this along to Mr. Rubio, I would recommend doing so. Like, share, subscribe.